Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art and Talk. Thank you so much for being with us today and watching. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Art and Talk. If you're new to Art and Talk is all about meeting artists and being inspired. We go into the mind and the heart of each artist guest, and we allow them to take us on a journey of their inner artistic world, and we dive into their background and various aspects of their art. So today I think you'll be very inspired by our guest. She is a writer and she has a very interesting background. We'll be diving into all the different areas of her background that's helped to also influence her writing. And we'll be looking at a trilogy she's written and be looking at some of the book covers of them as well. So I'd like to welcome for today our guest, Joanne Reed. Hi, Joanne, welcome.
Hi, how are you, Leslie?
Awesome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for
Um,
inviting me.
yes, absolutely. So, um, where's a good place to start? You have a background as a scientist, an
Yes,
educator, an
yes.
entrepreneur.
Uh-huh.
You worked a lot with computers,
A computer geek. Yeah.
computer geek. Such a rich and varied background. You have a lot of formal education as well.
Yeah,
Can you tap us into your background and kind of lead us into how your writing came about?
yeah, it's sort of parallel track. Um, I I started out life as a chemist. Well, I was born earlier than that, but but professionally I'm a chemist, and I'd worked at that for many years, and then I got into sales of scientific instruments, which brought me from the laboratory out to meet people, and then from there I got involved with computers and the selling and of computers, and I got into computer aided design, which at the time was brand new, and this new thing called AutoCAD, and there's an IBM PC, and boy, you had a floppy disk back when floppy disks were actually floppy disks, and you could put it in there, and wow, you could draw pictures, and but they were architectural type drawings, and that evolved over time. And then I began teaching that in colleges and discovered that people have a problem thinking. Had you noticed that? That the whole idea of actually putting a thought process together is very difficult for a variety of people. They just sort of grab stuff out of the air and say, that must be true. And I objected to that. And so I got into education at that point, picking up a master's and then a doctorate in education. And I'm one of the, I'm, okay, ready for a brag? I'm one of the leading experts on critical thinking. I'm the one who did the research discovering that A, you could teach people how to think critically. B, that people learned how to think critically. And three, that they used it in later life. So 5 years after they took my course, they were still using it and applying these principles in daily life. And of course, a lot of that involves writing. And you'd write and you write and you write and you write to newspapers and you write to journals and you do all this. But it's that dry, dull um, writing that scientists do. We show that, and in the beginning and over the course of these studies, we found that, and you know, all this backwards and inverted writing. And I got into writing because I love history. I discovered my own Scottish history mostly by accident. Began looking things up, began involved with talking with people about it, began writing Scottish history, again, for people who really didn't know that, well, for instance, the entire educational system of the United States is Scottish, things like that. Um, and then I got involved with writing techno thrillers. I wrote three techno thrillers. The first one was a moderate success until the publisher went out of business, which ended that. And then no one would touch any of them. Um, and then I got into this present loop, which is Gilraën, Gilraen, and she is an elf queen, except she isn't a she, she's a he. And ready for this? It starts out with a guy who's doing um, all sorts of these computer games online and doing all that kind of stuff, and very successful, a world champion who won $1 million. Not bad. Answers an ad, says, boy, this would be wonderful. Why don't you try this? So he did, and discovers that A, he's no longer on Earth. B, he's someplace else entirely. And he's not a he anymore. He's an elf. And he discovers later on there's an elf queen. But it is, in fact, a game. The game is, if he survives, he gets to go back with all the wealth he has retained and made and looted. Doesn't matter. He's got it all. But he has to win. Otherwise, he actually dies. So it's incumbent upon him to win. And this became a 3-book trilogy. It started out as a 400,000 word single novel. And everyone said, I'm sorry, we can't touch that. 400,000 words, are you kidding me? So I had to divide it up into 3. And again, the intellect part comes up. You go, oh, it's a wonderful trilogy. I came, I saw, I conquered, right out of Julius Caesar. So the first novel is Gilraën comes to this new society. The second one is she goes around this society, finding allies, meeting elves and dwarves, and actually almost gets eaten by a cat, a really big cat. But she makes friends. And in the third book, the allies all get together and finally win, except everything falls apart. And we get the twist on the twist on the twist. And I don't really want to ruin the end of the book, but there's about 3 twists that happen. You go, what? And there should be a tear or 2 in there, and then all is well again. So it's been a long and interesting journey. And then I wrote 4 more books after that, following up on it, where, then again, I'll let readers figure out where the next 4 books come from. But it's been fun, And of course, I'm retired now, so I get to do this full time, except, of course, you don't. One of the problems you always run into as a writer is the fact that once you've written the books, then you have to advertise them to people. And advertisement takes a tremendous amount of time. You don't know it as a writer. As a person trying to advertise and market your books, you find that you're spending more and more and more hours and hours. You go into Facebook and you go into Instagram and you go into there, and suddenly the day is gone and you haven't written a word. And this is, it's discouraging from the point of view of, as a writer. I really would prefer to be back writing and have somebody else do this for me. But of course, that's not how it works, as you well know. You have to be self-advertising and self-motivated to do all this stuff. So here I am again talking with you, and looking forward to the opportunity to take this and have it part of my marketing plan to advertise my books as well as Art and Talk as the program. So is that a good short story?
Yeah. Oh, wow. There's just so much rich content here. One of the things that I've been wanting to ask you, among many questions, is so with your background and being like kind of on the leading edge with critical thinking and all the technical papers that you wrote for several decades, and computer aided design and engineering, having this whole kind of background and way that you think and approach the world, yourself, and whatnot. When you met up with your friend to write this trilogy, and you found out that the theme was fantasy based, I'm curious as to what your initial reaction was based on what the content, the characters, this whole like imaginative exploration. How did that fit with you? Was it something you were open to? Is it something you just kind of went with, or what was the experience and the initial thoughts that you had?
I'm an avid reader. And of course, it started out, the very first book that we ever had was The Wizard of Oz. My grandmother read The Wizard of Oz to me. So there's your magic right there, instantly. And I fell in love with Lord of the Rings. I must have read Lord of the Rings maybe 24 times now. It's just one of the, so again, also I found Paolini's books, his 4-volume Heritage series, to be, again, wonderful. Um, I got into the Techno Thrillers because I'd read a lot of Tom Clancy and Brown and several of the others, and I said, I can do that, and I did. And then the opportunity came up to get into this particular world when a friend of mine was writing and sending me stuff, and I was editing for her, and it, she was writing business. She'd been writing business for a long time. The story was great, but her approach, her grammar, and everything else we get was business approach rather than the approach of a novelist. And so I was rewriting her stuff and editing, and she finally said, well, why don't you write it and I'll edit it? Well, that was pretty good because you may have noticed I'm verbose. I was born with a verbose switch on. Now there's a computer geek joke for you. Uh, so I started writing her books. And so we're about 2 chapters in, and she had a stroke. And all of a sudden, I was on my own going, I have this story, and now it was here. And it had to come out here. And it was unfortunate, but there she was, and she died. And so I had her notes as to what she was thinking about. And I had, of course, my idea of where it was going. And one of the problems you always run into as a novelist is your fingers get in the way of your brain. The fingers start typing a story, and your brain has this picture going on, and your fingers just type. And pretty soon you get really tired, your hands begin to hurt, and you look at it and you go, what did I just write? Because you spent 5, 6, 7 hours, and it's just been a flow of consciousness from your brain to the fingers to the keyboard. And you're really not aware of what you've typed because the movie is going on up here. And you're just a narrator. You're just following along saying, oh, this is what's happening. So, again, it's sort of like a producer or a director, but except the actors are now in complete control. People ask, where do your characters come from? Well, they simply occur. And sometimes you got to find a name for them, but the character itself evolves out of the story that you're telling. And the brain just keeps going crazy and having a grand time. And you end up dreaming about it, and you get to, it becomes a passion and an obsession as well. And you begin to just do all this kind of thing. So starting from things like The Lord of the Ring and Dunes and that kind of stuff, and from very early childhood with Wizard of Oz, I've always had a passion for the fantasy, for the other half of science, as it were. As my real world, of course, is just cold, hard facts. If you can't demonstrate it, it doesn't exist. That's now in my fantasy world, magic occurs. Now, of course, magic can't occur. This is a true universe where things are what they are. But in my mind, I can have a universe where magic can occur, but it has rules. And we all establish the rules as part of our novel. And there's some things that you can do and some things you can't do, but you set up the world. So for instance, I have probably 200 characters in my book. Who are they? Where did they come from? Well, one of the things I had to do was keep track of them as they were coming in. Who are they? What is their background? How are they related? Is this a major character? Is this a minor character? Is this a character that's only going to be met once and you'll never see them again? Or is this going to be a recurring secondary character? And how do they react into the story? What is their side story? And I ended up writing, oh my goodness, we have a fire alarm test going on in this building. So the sirens you hear are, yeah, that's our fire alarm system. Isn't it nice? So anyway, I wrote a companion, and it's a 90-page companion, just of who the people are, what the towns and cities are, what the mountains are, what the rivers are, where they are located. And oh, I do wish they'd shut that off. I'm sorry about that, but this will be unique. In all the history of art and talk, you'll never ever have another instance where the fire alarm is going off in the middle of your interview.
That's a first for sure. No worries. You know, it sounds like your propensity and kind of orientation for this critical thinking and this whole like almost like linear rational mind was so highly productive is what I'm getting from as all these characters were developed, because you have to think about all these different aspects as you're writing the book, and then combined with your love of fantasy and magic and you know, kind of exploring this whole other world of where it's anything is possible. It's not just the cold hard facts. I can really see how this, you know, would play into this trilogy, and then of course the subsequent series that came out, really getting into all the different aspects of the environment, of the characters, what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen, who are they, how is the story going to unfold, all these different areas.
Oh, yes. And you have to really keep track of all of the elements, and you have to be consistent. One of the problems that you can really run into quickly is with a reader, especially, the reader will pay attention. And if you say in chapter 1, this is how it works, and in the third book you say, this is how it works, they will just come right back and go, wait a minute, you didn't say that. You said something else entirely. What's going on? So you really, really have to keep track of it, because your readers are right out there. They're involved. They're involved with everything you do. It also gets in, there's an awful lot of military in there. That is, I have several major battles where lots and lots of people are going out and getting themselves killed. And what are the skills involved with humans, with dwarves, with elves? Who can do what? How do they work? How can they work together or opposed to one another? And what is a battle scene? What does it look like? This takes some considerable thought. And one of the things that I have done in the past is read a lot of military history. Uh, when I was a kid, I read the, what is it, 27, 28 book volume, The United States Navy in World War II by Admiral Samuel Eliot Morrison, which is a tome. It's huge. These are the big, huge dictionary-sized books, and it's a monster. And then you read Tom Clancy, and then you read Alan Brown, and these things begin to flow in. So when it came down to writing these, and again, I'm a child of World War II. I remember all the guys coming back from World War II and those that talked about it and what they did and what they didn't do and how things worked. And so my background is that of kids whose parents were in the middle of this. And then, of course, along comes Korea and then Nam. And then, so this is a part of my history. And so involving these huge battle scenes and how they work with a medieval taste. They don't have cannons anymore, but they did have a trebuchet. And once again, you see something on the television where they're doing pumpkin chunking. They will actually fire pumpkins at long distances using catapults and trebuchets. And so you could actually picture the same kind of a thing, except hurling a rock at a stone wall. And what's going to happen? Well, now as a chemist, I understand what happens when a rock hits a wall. Is going to be spalling, and there's going to be a certain amount of destruction. And again, the precision of the target, where you have to hit the same point, the same place every time in order to have an effect. You can't spread it out all over the place. It doesn't work. And so what's the point of precision? You need both precision and accuracy. And there you are. There's the scientist part of the novelist. And can a Krell and a work together with the people? Will a Krell work with a troll? Again, part of that is that's the fantasy, but can they lift up a big timber to assemble a trebuchet? Oh yeah, piece of cake. No, can humans do it? Well, yeah, but it takes like 30 of us, but we'd get it done. So yeah, you get all of it and just it begins to flow together, which is the advantage of living a long time.
Joanne, let's go ahead and let's take a look at the covers of these books. I think that really kind of helps to bring into the imagination for our viewers, kind of what's going on with all these characters.
Do you have them?
Okay, so let me go pull that up. Okay, here we go. Here's the first one. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
This is, again, there's been a lot of talk about these covers. As far as I'm concerned, they're wonderful. So you look at, let's take a look at the basic lettering. You see that I have the big title down here at the bottom, I Came, and you can see the way it's in there. You can see the kind of lettering. And notice at the very top and the very bottom, I have this bit of scroll work. Well, that's part of my identity as an author. That's part of my brand. Gilraën Chronicles is my overall brand for all of my books. Gilraën and the Prophecy is the trilogy, and I Came is this particular book. And you can see from this, there's a castle on a hill in the background, and it's sort of open. And there's this woman up front who is obviously an elf. So already we know, yep, this is fantasy. This is an elf with an arrow, bow and arrow. Okay, so we've got elves, we've got bow and arrows. Okay, so we've got that. We have a castle on a hill, super duper. We got this guy in the background with a big sword, a claymore. And who's he? You should be thinking about that. Who's he? And notice also up in the corner, up in the upper left corner, there's a face looking down. So there's this almost god-like ephemeral face looking down. And you should be asking, who's that? Now, in fact, of course, the elf is Joanne Reed, who we find is later on is Queen Gilraën. The guy is Prince William. The castle is his principality. And the face looking down over the top of us is the seeress. She is the high seeress of the elves, who is responsible for all of this. She is the hidden background powerhouse who is responsible for bringing Tony to this particular planet, and responsible for turning him into her. And this is a whole big thing that's going on. There's a civil war going on. The elves are painted themselves into a corner that they can't get involved. And so the seeress up there is doing a job of trying to get around the negotiations that were done in the past, where they were snookered. Yep. So how people that are that old can get snookered, I don't know, but they did. And so she is actually there to get around the restrictions of prior treaties. So this is the first one. Now in the second one, which is I saw, you notice the colors. First off, the colors are now yellow. We've gone from blue and pretty to something that is almost a fire in the background. And there's a fire building in the background. We also notice that the guy is right up close. Wow. So are these two people getting closer? Well, yes, not just physically, but as we find out in the book, they're getting closer to each other in every possible way. But the fire is there. And it's about to cause all sorts of problems. And again, the seeress is still looking over everything, making sure everything's going well. And in I Conquered, which is the third of the notice the sky is bright red. We have a conflagration going on. There's all sorts of things happening. This is war. This is down to and the two of them are now together. And one of the consequences, of course, of that is that they've fallen in love. Yeah, again, they were brought together. Now, as far as they're concerned, this was happenstance, the fact that they fell in love. The seeress knows better. The seeress knows that Gilraën is the spitting image of William's deceased wife. His wife was murdered by the bad guys. And the seeress, up in the corner, brought Gilraën back as the image to try and get this happen. She wanted the elves and the humans to get back together to fight the bad guys. And she knew that if they did not ally, they couldn't win. But once they were allied, this was really cool. Now, falling in love, that was an entirely different thing, but still within her grasp. She said, if that happens, it's really good. And it does. The consequences of it are staggering. And that's that's two big twists at the end of the third book. So you can see that there is a correlation between the first, the second, the third. There's a growth pattern going on here, and it's coming from relative peace and equanimity to fire. And of course, there is the trilogy itself. Now, again, the trilogy exists in Amazon, and it only exists as an ebook because it's well over 1,000 pages. So the three of them do sell separately, but this way you can actually get them as an ebook and enjoy them on your computer or Kindle device. So that's the big thing. And again, my logo is up the top and the bottom. You see the consistency of the font. I maintain this consistency throughout all of my books, and the Gilraën Chronicles, the big title for the series, and my name down the bottom. So I like my covers. Now, the next series is very different in terms of the colors and in terms of the content, and much more focused on Gilraën. And two of them are just Gilraën. That's the only person we see, and two of them are a combination of Gilraën and William.
First of all, I wanted to thank you, Joanne, for that elaboration of all the visual cues that are going on in the book cover. Because we know that the book cover is so important because it really helps to visually tell the story of the contents, the words that are inside. So going back to this trilogy and then the subsequent series, I think you mentioned there are 4. We're now focusing more on her. And can you give us a little bit more about what's going on in that respect with focusing on her?
They've only, at the end of the first book, we have recovered Umbek Jurali, which is the northern half of the continent, leaving the southern half of the continent still under the bad guys. And so the second 4 books is how we go about the process of liberating the other 2 parts, which are Narwartland and, oh gosh, I've forgotten the name of it. Oh, Pharaoh's Spike. So how's this for a couple of names? Narwartland and Pharaoh's Spike, both of which are under the control of the evil bad guys, the Adjudicars. You're supposed to say it that way. You can't say Adjudicar. You have to say Adjudicars because they're the bad guys. And she is determined that they're going to liberate the continent. And this also gets into the idea of what is a kingdom, what parts of the kingdom, because it involves a dukedom which is a part of the northern kingdom, but physically is located in the southern, just below the central mountains in Narwartland. And there's a battle going on between Narwartland and the Duke is actually under the king, under King William, and they're trying to save the dukedom. And this involves everything. So it becomes 4 books. In the first book, Gilraën returns, and that's the title of it, Gilraën returns. All the things that happened and separated them and everything else are now resolved. Should we say that they get married? Yeah, it's true. They do. So the falling in love that occurred in the first 3 books and the separation that occurs and everything else, they get back together and they get married and they're really happy. And in the second book, Gilraën and some of her elf tribe go into Narwartland in disguise. They're disguised as various and sundry work people. She's disguised as a blacksmith. She disguised herself really as a creator of weapons of war. She's and that's what her inn is. And so rather than just being a standard blacksmith, she's a weapons smith. But again, the Adjudicars are there, and can she figure out what they're going to do, their society, what their war plans are, what their distribution of their troops are, when is the invasion actually going to occur and by whom, and find out all this information while she's in the middle of it, trying to suppress the idea that she's actually an elf, and see what's going on and get in with the army, get in with the politicians, get in with everybody, even though she's brand new at it. and then escape before they figure out that she's not really what she seems to be. In the third book, she escapes, goes to the dukedom, and they're under siege, they're under attack. There's a huge attack going on, all sorts of physical and magical attacks going on. It's really a mess, and they're waiting for William to come to their rescue. So they're trapped, they're under siege, and William is going to come in with his army and drives them back. And in the fourth book, they actually go into Pharaoh Spike, and everything is resolved, and except of course Gilraën is killed, and that is a minor problem with the continuation of the story. The good part is the seeress saves her at the last moment, almost killing herself in the process, and then it is resolved. So yeah, I mean, it's really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, so much excitement and so much adventure and all these twists and turns, and so well thought out. You are such an amazing combination of like full capacity of left and right hemispheres going on. And also you have this beautiful lightness. It's almost like you're not really taking it so seriously like you are, but it comes across in this like very like light way, and you're like, well, what does this mean, and how do we look at this, and what's going on? It's just this whole beautiful like Joanne inner world.
You have the images of the covers of the last four books?
No, only the trilogy. Yeah, yeah,
Because they're cool too.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And I love how you took us through the whole beginning and through these four books coming after the trilogy as well. Who are your readers? Can you touch upon what kind of readers do you have that are attracted to all this adventure and all this fantasy and you know, rich with history and all these character developments and action?
It's really hard for me to say. As you know, trying to get the feedback through Amazon is really tricky. Um, Obviously, one group is young men who will be attracted to the whole idea of war and battle and that kind of thing. The same group that would read Lord of the Rings and the Heritage series, Dune, that kind of stuff. I find there's a lot of women involved, again, who see a woman as a strong character and capable of actually being as strong or not, or even stronger than the male characters, being the leader and being responsible for being the leader. Especially true in book 4, where she makes some tragic errors. I mean, just unconscionable. You know, at first, what is she doing? And then discovers that power is not wisdom. Just because you can force the issue doesn't mean you're right, and doesn't mean that the consequences won't be there. So you should think about the consequences first, and then if power need be applied, fine. And it's her tribe that calls her out and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" Uh, so again, that whole area comes in. So I'm not 100% sure who all my readers are. I wish I had a better way of figuring it out. Now, in terms of, for instance, the people who are involved in the email, I have a very, very large mixture. Many women, middle age mostly, a lot of men from quite young to old farts like me. And so it's a mixed bag. I think it's just that group of people who like fantasy. And I think that that's a very broad group. We sort of grew up with Lord of the Rings and just have kept that evolution going. Now, it's not the group that gets involved with some of the newer cliques. I don't get involved with vampires. There are no Sasquatches. I don't even have any dragons. Now, there are mentions of dragons, but they're a side issue. So it's elves and dwarves and humans primarily, and you know, a medieval area. So, but here's a spoiler. In the first book, they figure out that, well, maybe because Gilraën's tribe is all humans who've been transformed, why don't we build a bicycle? One of the simplest of all mechanical types of travel, build a bicycle. Except, of course, it turns out that a bicycle is really a complicated tool, complicated mechanism, hard to do, especially in a medieval society where blacksmiths with hammers are doing all of the physical work. How do you build a decent tube framework? How do you build a rim? What is a roller bearing? What's a ball bearing? Never heard of it. They have no idea. They put an axle into a conical section and put grease from a cow on it just to keep it rotating. But the whole idea of a ball bearing, what are you talking about? This has no meaning at all. And yet, if you really want to build a bicycle, you have to have ball bearings everywhere, in the sprockets and the gears and the pedals. What about tires? What do you do for tires? How do you keep it round and maintain the center of rotation of the tire itself? And all these wonderful things are going in there in a medieval society. The modern people know what they want to do, but how do you do it? And building a bicycle. So again, building the technology into an area, and also saying, we understand the problems of technology. We understand that technology is destroying this planet right now. We came from that planet. Do we really wish to destroy this planet in the same way? Or shall we be more responsible? Shall we think about the consequences first and build it later and just figure out how to do it correctly? And so all of this stuff keeps weaving in from the context of me as a scientist through the context of me as a fantasy writer. So where does fantasy begin and where does reality begin? Yes, good question. And as far as the readers are concerned, I hope that it's a broad, general group of people, everything from 12 years old to 112. As long as you like fantasy, as long as you can step out from the real world and say, yeah, let's have magic. Wouldn't magic be cool? And say, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I love that. We still have a few more minutes. Joanne, if we can kind of get a little bit of insight into like being in your space when you're actually writing. It sounds like you very easily vacillate between this logical linear side and the whole creative flow and imagination. So when you're actually there and you're writing and you're in that process, is that correct? It's just, and as you were saying earlier, it's like as you're writing, it's like the characters are being developed, the scene, you're seeing the scenes in your mind and it's kind of being acted out, and then you're writing it out. Is there any else in terms of your actual writing process, either technical or creative, that you can share with us?
Oh, the writing process for me becomes I sort of dive into it and my world disappears. And it's a case of, again, an obsession. When I was writing my first novels, I actually had to have my hands around ice cubes for several hours just to get the pain down because there's a constant typing. You become involved and your brain sits there and it concentrates on this. And even when you go to sleep, the brain is still working. You wake up in the middle of the night, go, oh. And I have a pad of paper, of course, sitting there so I can scribble down the ideas before I lose them. Wake up in the morning and go, who wrote this? Oh yeah, and do that. The ideas, once you're into that flow, the ideas come. Getting there is the problem. So you need to be able to set aside the time and that you can be alone. Other people can be around, and whatever you use as your distraction. Now, I have a television on over here, and it's the noise in the background. So I need a noise in the background. I don't do well with complete silence. Okay, other people have to do complete silence. Great. Whatever it is that allows you to get into that flow of mind where the mind is just good. And the fingers are detached from the brain. The brain goes directly to the keyboard. I don't know how, but it does. And you have to be sort of in that mode. You can't be thinking about what am I going to write? You're going to be typing what you're thinking. And it's got to be one of these automatic processes. And I find when I'm in that state, everything is just flowing. And getting out of it is the problem, because you're into the story and you yourself do not know how it ends. You want to go and because I don't plan out the entire story. I have a basic idea of what I want to do, and I go, okay, I know where it should start, and I know where it should end. Now, what is the journey? And that's part of the fun for me, is what is the journey? I don't plot out every single move. I don't plot out all the consequences. I don't plot out that, the three climaxes that you're supposed to have. I don't do that. It just occurs. Again, there are many people who cannot write that way, who must plot it out entirely. The very famous author I know has everything on Post-it notes, and he lines up the wall with Post-it notes. And when he doesn't like what it's going, he pulls a Post-it note off and puts another one in and rearranges them. And this is his method of putting together a story. And I encourage it, but it's not mine. I know what it is, and I let the free thought just flow. And that's one of the problems that I have. I can paint myself into a corner really quickly. So once again, establishing the rules of the universe in which you're writing is important, and maintaining those rules. Say, no, I can't do that. It reminds me back when in Star Trek, when they had the phaser, and the first shot stunned you, and the second shot killed you, and the third shot evaporated you completely. Well, this was a mistake, and everyone admits, why did we do this? This was the stupidest thing we ever did in the program. Well, again, you just can't make matter simply disappear. It doesn't do that. But they painted themselves into a corner, and thereafter it became part of the story, and you had to maintain it, whether they wanted to do it or not. So again, you do have, but that has to go into the editing side rather than the creative side. So yeah, it's how I do it. I just get myself going. And again, the problem is where I'm at right now is I have to do all this marketing. I'm constantly on Facebook. I'm constantly on Instagram. I'm constantly here and there, and I can't get the time to sit there and go, let's get into the novel. Okay. And it takes about half an hour of thinking it through, of typing it up. And then the words begin to flow, the characters begin to flow, the situations begin to come, and you're not there. There's just the keyboard, and the picture is going on, and the keyboard is working. And somehow you're not there.
I love that. I was so captivated by what you were saying. And I love when the inspiration hits, could be, late at night and you're sleeping in bed, you have the pen and paper. It's like, okay, yeah, I have some good ideas going on. And I love the words you use. It just occurs, like when you're actually in the writing process, it just occurs. You use the word automatic. And I thought that was so interesting. And you said there was no thought. And I thought that's so interesting. It's just literally just flowing out of you. And there's that, like, as you said, a little bit half hour of kind of like prep, warm up, and then kind of gets the wheels going. And then once you're in that state, it's just this automatic flow. And I just thought that was really beautiful and kind of helps us tap into, your method that works for you.
Oh, yeah. But again, it takes time to get there. And it's just sort of an exclusionary process in that you gradually get rid of the rest of the world, and you are now within the story. And you're the narrator. You're watching everything going. Now, I write first person past. So I am the central character. These things are happening to me as I am writing. So I'm there. I'm actually doing these things, and my hands are just narrating for me. And so I'm Gilraën, and William is coming over here, and then that's happening over there, and this is happening, and I am observing it, which is a wonderful limitation in that I cannot know about what's happening over there until someone tells me. So I'm ignorant of all the rest of the universe that's going on around me. So there's no God-like thing coming down. There's no narrator who knows everything and tells you what's going on and says, well, and over here, this is, and in the meanwhile, Tonto is busy. No. If I can't actually see it, it doesn't occur. So I actually have to go out and do things. I have to have someone tell me that something has occurred. And then how did that someone else know about it and then get to me to tell me what was going on? I'm wiggling my screen, aren't I? I get excited. So, and that's the limitation, but you accept it because then it's a journal and you were writing about your own experiences and how you did things. And which is very different from a third person point of view, where you have an overview saying, oh, look at this action. Here's something going on over here. There's something going on over here. This became quite a problem in the third book when Gilraën is in command and has several armies out over in distant areas. So she always has people reporting back to her, which causes her unduly amounts of confusion as different people are shouting at her from different points. And of course, now these are all elves, so it's brain to brain kinds of thing. And her brain is being filled with all these people shouting at her from all these different angles. And how do you figure it out? How do you coordinate it? And again, I was in the middle of that. I was actually doing it at the time. So you can figure, there you are, you're trying to write about this, and the motion picture is going on, and you're simply transcribing it onto the keyboard. So it's a different approach. I don't think a lot of people would be happy with it because it is, there's no structure to it. A lot of people like structure. It's important to them. Whereas I say, let it happen. And later on, if I don't like it, it's fine. I can change it. It's not written in stone. It's on a computer. You can cross things out and change things around. But that's simply my approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. As we need to get ready to wrap this show up, Joanne, do you have any words of advice to a writer who is watching this, whether they're in the fantasy genre or not, where you could offer some words of wisdom to, kind of advise them on their writing journey, kind of open them up to some things?
Yeah. First off, don't ever expect to get rich. You're not going to. Having said that, be sure of your understanding of your language, whatever language it is that you're writing in. Be accomplished in it. Understand that there is a vocabulary. It's a real vocabulary. If you're going to make up words, you have to do it like Shakespeare or anyone else, that this is a unique form and you are introducing it. Know the English language, know how the structure is put together, know what a sentence is, know what a paragraph is, know how do a lot of reading, You have to know how a story works. And sometimes if you go back into the older books, Count of Monte Cristo, it's 1,000 pages, but it's an incredibly beautiful story. Again, Lord of the Rings, 3 beautiful volumes, and they're lovely books. How did he put it together? And remember, it was over a period of many years that he put this together. This was not just blasted out. Become accomplished in writing itself. If you have to take a class, go to your community college classes in creative writing. They're wonderful. They will really, really, really expand your abilities. And then take the advice of people around you. Remember, you are not a good editor. You need to have an editor. You need to have someone to go in there and go, no, this is rough around the edges. You need to smooth this out. You've used incorrect grammar. You've used incorrect whatever. Why don't you take the story and invert it? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You're much too wordy. Your descriptions are just huge and long, and you've left out all your characters. Get the advice of someone who actually knows what they're talking about, and then accept it. I know it's your baby. I know you love it. I know it's the most wonderful, perfect piece of literature that the world has ever seen, but accept the advice of people who know better. Then, cover. Cover is critical. The first thing that people see is the cover. The second thing is the blurb, the thing on the back side of the book. Take the time to do it. It's terrible. It's an odious, awful process. All of us complain about writing blurbs. We're terrible at it. And everyone will tell you, I don't write a good blurb. And that's true. We don't. Be consistent in your book. And then see if you can get a decent agent or a publisher. They're very, very difficult. They're very, very picky. The likelihood of you getting a decent editor, a decent agent is low. The probability of you getting into a decent publisher is very, very low. If you've already sold 1 million books, the publisher will really be interested in. But until then, nah, they don't like it. So be prepared to go into something like Amazon. Study it, look at it, take courses in how to go into Amazon. They're worth your while to do this. And then market the heck out of it. You've got to market it and market it and market it. Otherwise, it's just not there. You have to sell the books, and you're the only one who can. So you're going to have to consider your day. What is your day like? When do you get up in the morning? What do you do? How many hours can you really put into the processes of marketing, processes of writing, and stick to it? It's you have just decided on a lonely life. If you are an introvert, this is hog heaven for you. If you're an extrovert, you're in trouble. How's that? Is that a good start?
Yes, that was great. And then it's a lot of really great solid information, for writers to expand upon and to really take into consideration. And you're such a beautiful spirit, and you're so well balanced, like structure, no structure. It's all good. It all works together. It's almost like they're not even opposites in your world. They just are like in this spin of harmony going on, and it's just really beautiful for me to hear you speak and your beautiful books and what they're all about, and your excitement and your passion for it. So thank you so much, Joanne.
Much for inviting me. I really had a fun time.
Awesome. I'm so glad it was fun for you. Let us know how we can stay connected with you, social media, and get a hold of your books.
Yes, we will talk.
Can you let us know now, so the viewers have an idea of where they can connect with you?
Yes, I have a website, Gilraën Chronicles. You can get to me right there. And I got all sorts of stuff for you. Of course, you can find me on Amazon, as you did. Joanne Reed is on Amazon. And you can find me on Facebook. You can find me either as Joanne Reed or as Gilraën Chronicles. I'm on in both capacities. So you can find me all over the place. I'm easy. You could actually look me up on, what is it? Google. So Joanne R. Reed, that's me. Put the R in because there's several variations, and you'll find me page after page, and some of it's my doctoral stuff, and some of it's my writing. But you'll find me and just pick. So I'm easy.
Very good, Joanne. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Art and Talk and sharing your vast world of your writing, your creativity, and technical knowledge, and just making this all come to life for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie Sue. It's a pleasure being with you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, and you as well. Much success. We'll be in touch. Thank you, everyone, for watching Art and Talk today. Please stay connected with us on our Facebook page. Please like and follow us, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We appreciate your support, and we'll talk soon on the next Art and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed.